Hey everyone, welcome. My name's Tony D, and this is another hot take. And we're going to talk about Joe Biden and that he's falling apart. Um, you know, everybody misspeaks, case in point. But Joe Biden's gaffes have gotten astronomically more gaffier as the campaign has rolled on. And you have to really question, is this the guy who could even survive a campaign against Trump, much less beat Trump? I don't think so. You know, Bernie is just more energetic, even though he's older. He seems to be more thoughtful than Biden. I think part of Biden's gaffes are he's just not paying attention. He's a politician, and I've done this, doing improv or even making videos. I've kind of tuned out as I'm talking, not really listening to what I'm saying, and I get ahead of myself, and that's where I start to flub. Like, I think that's what Biden's doing. You know, you do a lot of stump speeches when you run for president or whatever office, and he's doing them, and he's saying the same thing over and over and over again. It must get pretty boring. But, and then you just see the clips of the mistakes. You don't see, 3 hours of him getting it right, and then finally, a 10-minute speech he did 100 times right. You only see the one speech he just completely bungled, or the clips from it. So I don't think Biden is actually as bad as the media may be portraying him. I think it's been exacerbated by social media, but he is seemingly going through the early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, or I guess that's both. I'm not really sure the distinction. So, the first thing Biden needs to do, and I think he should have done this sooner rather than later, is name a VP who's young, who's going to take over after his first term. So the idea being he's just going to pass the torch. He's not even going to run for a second term. He's just running to get rid of Trump. Like, people could kind of get behind that. The question is Joe behind that? Because old people typically don't want to admit they're getting old. They don't want to give in to that. Because once they do, it's kind of a defeat that mentally hurts them. And I think it probably would make Joe a little worse if he had to admit that. Although he's kind of admitted it on the trail, how old he is. You got to feel for the guy. He lost a son. His son, Beau Biden, who died of cancer, should be the one running for president. Really, he was the one who was being groomed for the role until he passed away. And then you could see Hunter. Well, Hunter, he can't run for president. He can't run for anything, really. He's got too crazy a background. But, that doesn't excuse the fact that Biden is not going to be able to run the country. I just don't think he can do it. I also don't think he'll beat Trump unless something extraordinary happens. Like, they both get low battery. They both get the coronavirus, and, and Trump is like severely injured by it. That's another thing I forgot to mention in my video about coronavirus. I keep calling it the coronavirus. It's the coronavirus. The coronavirus could really hurt Trump, I think, now. I thought about it some more, because the thousands of deaths that are likely to occur, it's not going to be his fault, but he's going to get blamed. Now, Pence being in charge of it now, which may have been a move on Trump's part, might work out politically very well, because Pence would be the buffer if the worst happened. If and when, coronavirus breaks wide open in the United States and people just start dropping dead everywhere, at the end of the day, like, Pence could fall on his sword and say, well, I was really in charge of that, or that could be the media spin. Trump was too busy with other things, and Pence was really he put Pence in charge and he screwed it up. But so that could, going into November, if he's running against a guy like Biden, Biden could use that effectively if he can hold it together mentally in a debate and say, well, you bungled the response to coronavirus. Thousands of people died because of you. And that could resonate, whether it's true or not. Bernie saying that, Trump would have easy comebacks for him. Well, what's your solution, Bernie? Everybody should be in bread lines. Because, Bernie just has, his gaffes are of a magnitude much higher than Biden's. At least Biden's gaffes, you can say, well, he's an old man. He gets confused sometimes. He says things that are stupid. He might be losing it, but he doesn't mean it. See, Bernie's gaffes, he means. They're not gaffes. That's Bernie. Bernie praised the Soviet Union. He's recently praised Cuba. I mean, there's no getting around that. Oh, did I run out of battery? No. There's no getting around Bernie's supporters who are openly Marxist and communist and Leninist and anarchist. There's no getting around it. And they may riot whether Bernie wins or not. He might win and they still riot. They still light cars on fire. How's that going to look, Bernie? You don't have control of these Antifa guys, and you haven't disowned them. They're yours. You had this sort of tepid, like, well, I of course don't endorse any political violence. You had to kick to the curb Antifa specifically, because otherwise they're going to do things in your name, and if you don't disown them specifically, you got to kind of take the damage. It's kind of on you. And if they riot in Milwaukee, even after you win, which is a possibility because they could just be so happy, or they could just be so geared up, they figured he'd lose, but then he won, and they go, yay, and they just burn the place anyway. Imagine that. That would be an absolute PR disaster for Bernie. Now, part of that will depend upon which way the media goes. I think it's likely the media will push Bernie off a cliff. They're going to just turn against them, possibly start pushing for Biden, and just turn on a dime and say, Bernie's no good, and start playing his old tapes, praising Venezuela, praising this, praising all these communist regimes. It's not going to be a good look. There's no one in the Midwest who's going to support that. Certainly not in Texas. Certainly Florida's done. Bernie cannot win Florida. He cannot win it. After what he said about Cuba, forget it. There's not a single Cuban in Florida that wants to vote for Bernie. Not one, in my view. So, and Florida's an important state in the election. Trump's got Ohio locked. It's a pretty red state. He's got most of western Pennsylvania. He'll probably win that again. At least with Biden, you could win a few states. And at the end of the day, the Democrats could say, well, our candidate, he was old, he was falling apart. You could blame it on that. If you have to, run Bernie, how you're going to have to rebuild the entire brand. It's not just getting another guy in there. You're going to have to disown socialism. Big time. You're going to have to redefine what it means to be a Democrat. Because if you don't, people are just going to go, oh, that's all that Bernie Bolshevik crap. I don't want any part of that. So with Biden, him falling apart is probably less important to the party than keeping Bernie from winning. Because if at least Biden makes a good show of it, they have an excuse to throw him the superdelegates, they'll lose, but it'll be like, well, Trump beat up on the old guy, he gave it a shot, we tried our best, but just wasn't good enough. But you will have to kick to the curb these socialists and communists. You have to kick them out of the party. It's the only way. Let them make their own party. Back in the day, they would make their own party. Let them be a third party. Who cares? Look, if people in that party are going to be like AOC, do you think they're going to have any sensible programs that people are going to jump onto? The new Green Deal was moronic. It was communism. It was communism in 14 pages. It's essentially what it was. It had very little to do with climate change. It was a utopian vision written by a woman who sounded like she hadn't graduated the 8th grade. So, if that's the kind of people who are going to be in the Democratic Socialists of America, let them be in it. They're not going to get any votes. They're not going to get anything. They won't have a coherent message. It'll be a place to dump all your mentally ill lefties that you don't want to deal with. You just drop them right into the Democratic Socialists of America and let them have their crazy meetings where they have to do jazz hands instead of applaud, can't use gendered language, have to check their privilege every 10 seconds. They won't get anything done. No one will listen to them. And that's a good thing.